Yeah, it's recording. Good.
Perfect.
Perfect. Well, I mean, thanks for taking time to do this. I really appreciate it. Um, geez, there's so what's new and exciting? I mean, I guess tell me a little bit more about who you are, right? Just so for the people who do listen to this podcast, so they know.
Yeah, my name's Frederick Schuett, and I guess some people have called me an outdoor adventure, professional outdoor adventure. Anything to do with ropes and adventure exploration, I'm really big on. So, a lot to do with mountaineering, spelunking. My big thing right now would be volcanoes. So, doing anything to do with heat, volcanoes, heat suits, customized heat suits to get close to lava, into pits of fire. This year, in a couple things I've done, we have this year in the what is it called? The Guinness Book World Records. We have
Yeah.
one of my expeditions to Turkmenistan to the Pit of Fire is there.
Okay.
And so that's pretty interesting to see that. So that was the first ever time anyone's gone down into that Pit of Fire in Turkmenistan called the Gateway to Hell. And I did all the rope work, all the rigging for it, but I wasn't the guy going in for the TV show. So I'm
Okay.
usually behind the scenes, and in the Ripley's Believe It or Not this year, 2020, there's a two-page spread on a zip line over a lava lake in Ethiopia. The first time anyone's ever zip lined over lava or set up a rope over lava over an active volcano, and that was so that's in Ripley's Believe It or Not this year, and that was a Brazilian celebrity that hired me to do the rope work for that. So again, exploration usually has to do with rope work. Usually some sort of extreme access is required.
Yeah.
And then I'll be hired in to do that. So yeah, stuff like that. TV shows, film sets, documentaries.
Right. I mean, so I guess my question is like, how did this line of work become a thing? Like, how did this whole thing kind of transpire? Like, what led to this?
Yeah, it's been a long road. So I've been doing this for about 20 years now, and maybe the last 5 years, these kind of really unique expeditions have kind of popped up. And but it's been years running. So I started an outdoor adventure company, mostly in the rock climbing, mountaineering, and started that in the year 2001.
Hmm.
And since then, I've been getting my expertise known around the world as mostly for zip lining because it's a little bit unique. Before
Okay.
zip lines were really big in Ontario, there was very few people who knew how to set up professional zip lines. And even for me
Right.
now, I'll still set up rope zip lines where I can set it up in a few hours and take it down in the same day, which is still very unique. I
Hmm.
don't have to have it's not as complicated for me to set up a big zip line between two buildings or something. For my crew, it's quite easy for us because we do it all the time. So we started with a zip line company, rock climbing mountaineering company, and then
Hmm.
slowly, usually how I got known was through film industry contacts, TV shows, documentaries. They would need something for their TV show, and they'd be like, "Well, who can do this?" And they probably would be searching online. They'd find me, or they'd talk to someone that I've worked with in the past and say, "Call this guy. He does that stuff." For
Right.
like reality TV show, they need to walk a tightrope between two buildings. Well, who
Hmm.
do you call to do that? You start looking and for extreme rigging, and then you find someone like myself that does that sort of thing.
Hmm. So you're essentially the behind the scenes madman, so to speak. You're
Usually,
the guy.
yeah, behind the scenes in a TV show or movie, setting something up. A lot of times I'll be on a TV show or in a
Hmm.
documentary as the rope guy, and I might be like given the safety instructions to the contestants before they do it.
Hmm.
So that's quite often I'm on TV for that sort of thing, but I just play myself. I'm not acting to be on. Usually, sometimes they try and feed me some lines and they want me to say a specific thing, which is fine. But usually, behind most of my stuff is behind the scenes. Sometimes you never see me, right? I just my ropes are there. The guys skydiving out of an airplane in a movie or TV show, but really it's me pulling them on a rope on a green
Right.
screen, and we have fans blowing on the guy, and
Okay.
and I'm there to haul the guy up in the air and stuff like that. So yeah, kind of unique.
Yeah. Well, I mean, seriously unique in terms of like lines of work you can get into. I mean, that's it's sort of a unique field. What sort of like what I guess my question is like, what drove you to do this? Like, why out of like, most people are like, hey, they want to do some regular job or they want to do some normal career. Like, what drove you and what continues to drive you to do this, like day in and day out, like the profession?
I think as just a lot of people find when they're younger, and I just find it continually, that I like exploration, I like exploring, and I like doing things that are exciting, and I like being outdoors, outside,
Mm-hmm.
and doing something different. If people look at my business, not only do I do the rigging side, but I have like all these different levels of different things I do, like corporate team building, the film and stunt, recreational. So I guess I get bored easy, maybe. So I have all these
Okay.
different things I dabble in. They all have to do with outdoor adventure. But in school, school, I started kind of getting into drafting, and I actually had a job as a draftsman. And I kind of
Okay.
thought architectural drafting, because I did some mechanical drafting. It got a little boring, kind of just
Mm-hmm.
drawing some mechanical piece for, I have no idea what it is, but I have to like draft it up perfectly. Got boring. I thought, well, house design and houses and cars might be funner.
Right.
As I went more into architecture, in drafting, I found that you can only do it, you have to do what they want you to do, right? You can't design the
Mm-hmm.
house you want. So,
Mm-hmm.
I did a few projects where I had to build design like an apartment building, and you had to follow all the rules of what they wanted, how many rooms, how many floors, and go through all the codes, make sure everything's. And it got really boring, and I realized
Mm-hmm.
I really don't want to do this as a career at my desk all day long. I kind of really want to do something more adventurous and be outside more, even if I maybe didn't have the money income as an architect, but maybe I have quality of life would be better, maybe in the sense of
Right.
being happier instead of
Mm-hmm.
being. So I just decided to make that change in my early 20s to kind of seek outdoor adventure as a career more than any other kind of standard kind of job.
Right. I mean, yeah, geez, you're because what you do is, and I'm not trying to like praise you too much, but what you're doing is so it's unique in the sense of like you don't stumble across people of your line of work every day. And so that's actually kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you was because you're I think what you're doing and what you're able to sort of show people is that there's alternative paths that you don't have to do just one thing, right? There's all sorts of different avenues that you can go down. And I'm sure you must see that like when you're doing like team building exercises, right? So like what does that really look like when you're doing like a team building exercise for people, for instance? Like how does one go about doing that?
Well, team building, what I've decided, again, a little bit unique. It started with me running this outdoor adventure company, which ran rock climbing, ice climbing, zip lining. And someone came to me that worked for a team building company and said, like, I design outdoor team building programs, or I do team building, but I somehow want to bring them outdoors and add like a scary factor to it, like a trust factor. And
Mm-hmm.
I kind of said, okay, well, I can work with you on that. And they said, well, so we worked on a program together, and we kind of designed this program where, they're, you know, answering riddles and clues or working together to solve problems. And then there'd be like, well, now you have to go zip line across the gorge or a cliff, a few hundred feet, grab this next clue and come back for your team. And like, who's going to go? And your team kind of decides, well, you're terrified. You don't want to do it. This guy's on the fence and this person's dying to do it. So then they kind of work together, and there'll be other challenges throughout this program that require different expertise. So they kind of decide as a team what's the best way to execute it. And that's kind of, how it started. And then I decided, this is just actually a lot of fun. Designing these
Mm-hmm.
programs and running the programs is a lot of fun. So I kind of went above and beyond and developed our own team building programs over the years. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and we have some really unique ones. One of them, which it could be its own program on its own, it's Mission Impossible, like we call it. Although sometimes we've changed the name to Mission Possible or whatever. It doesn't have to be a ripoff of a TV show movie, but it kind of gets people
Right.
ideas. And it's nothing like in a, what are those called? Those escape rooms. You have these escape
Yeah.
rooms.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not like that at all, but that's probably the closest thing you can imagine, except
Okay.
it's 4 hours long. We have the buildings all black. We wear our staff wear all SWAT equipment and like sometimes even face masks and like, we kind of, and it looks like kind of fit in this kind of scenario that kind of makes people feel like they're in a real setting. The building's dark. They get flashlights. They get blueprints of the building, and they have to move through these different sectors. And there's a challenge at each sector that takes about 40 minutes to accomplish as a team. And we kind of design it as a way that you can't really accomplish any of these things without being in a team. You need a team to finish them in the sense that and it's all real hands-on stuff. It's I did see some team building when I started developing team building programs. A lot of it was like imaginative stuff. Like you're all sitting at a table, imagining something, or you go to like a big conference room, and you go like, okay, imagine this is a river and we have to get across to the other side. And they're something. I was just like, this is really lame. Like if I was a kid, I'd feel this was lame. As an adult, it just gets worse, right? And you're like trying to like, want to, get involved, but it's so hard when it's like obviously not a river and you're obviously just playing a game on a carpeted floor. So we kind of make it real. So we're like, well, on the side of the cliff, there's this cave you got to get to, and there's these gold coins in there, and you need so many coins to complete this task you're on. And well, it's actually on the side of a cliff, and here's the ropes, and you got to get down there for real. This is not like an imaginary game anymore. Now it's real life. And your teammates actually have to lower you down the cliff too. Right. And then, we'll have a safety rope on you, but we won't do anything unless they do something wrong. So we'll just teach you how to lower each other down this 60-foot cliff, and you'll have to communicate with each other for real. So we kind of take cool scenarios, make them real life, and then have the teams do it. And because it's so real life, they get really involved in it, either emotionally and it's not hard to make people want to do things. Like the Mission Impossible ones where it's all dark. We have a 60-foot laser field that looks just like a movie. In a movie, it's all dark, and you see your laser beams. It's a huge room, and there's smoke, and that's how you can see the laser beams in the smoke. And it's like, okay, on the other side of the room, there's a bomb that's going to blow up in 40 minutes. So you got to get your team through the laser field, and we're going to score you against other teams about how well you get through these laser beams without setting off alarms. And then when you get to the side, there's a kit. You have a bomb deactivation kit with instructions and tools like wire strippers and cutters, and it's all real life. It's like, other than the bomb is not real, the lasers they do trip an alarm, but it's not gonna like bring a bunch of guys with armed guns attacking you. The whole idea is it is real. Like if you touch a laser, alarms go off. So it's kind of like, we're not just pretending here. It's like the alarms do go off, and the instructor, he just kind of disappears into the smoke and just observes you. And you have your own instructions that you have to follow as a team. And how well you follow those instructions decides, well, how good you score against your other teammates on other programs. So it's all very real life and exciting. And I enjoy it. I like to sit back and just watch everyone have a good time. And my staff have a good time, and everyone's having a good time. And it's amazing to develop these programs that really engage people. We have people that are like trying to hog the bomb, like they don't want to share it. And you have a good program when you have to force people to share, like grown adults have to like force them to share the experience with their teammates because it's a team building activity. So that's when I know I'm happy that, it's a good program when people are fighting to do it. And to hog the experience. They don't want to share it.
Now, like for instance, what kind of business company, like for instance, do you do any work with like the military, police, or any emergency responders or anything along that line?
So again, because our business, we do have 3 different parts of our business. We do some military stuff, not so much in like our Mission Impossible program. They do more like rappel training. Usually mostly has to do with rappel training or some sort of rope experience. So learning rope skills. So we'll do stuff with the police or military groups for that. Some military groups just come out for a fun experience. So they're not really training, but it's kind of like, it's almost like a perk. They get to have some fun, but it's usually on something that somewhat relates to military. But for our corporate team building stuff, it's usually like Google's a big contract for us. So we have Google. We have a lot of different Google groups coming out. A lot of banks will come up with us, pharmaceutical companies, cell phone companies. like Kellogg's, Campbell Soup, all those kind of bigger companies that have quite a few employees spread over a larger area or between other buildings, and they need to somehow keep spirits high and keep people working together. So
Yeah.
they'll do these team building events to kind of as a perk, but then also to keep everyone kind of happy. And sometimes it'll be other departments that don't know each other. They'll split them up. Or if they're flying in from different branches of a company from all over Canada to meet in Toronto, then they might bring everyone out on an event with us before they might go to a conference, meet in, do something with us, and then they go out for dinner. Then they have a great time because they really know each other on an experience that only took 4 hours, but it feels like they know each other for like years, right? Because they just like deactivated a bomb, they shot some stuff, they rappelled through a floor, they did all these clues, and they like broke into the safe. So this, the experience is really action packed for 4 hours. So when they're done, they have stuff to talk about for weeks afterwards, which is much better than going to play around a golf or something. And you can talk a little bit about it. But more or less, was pretty uneventful, right? You can talk about how good someone is, how bad they are, or how that one shot was bad. But in the activities that we do, they're so action packed. You could talk about how we ran the program, what you would have did better, what all this stuff, plus the program itself. So there's so many things to talk about. It really it's a catalyst really for relationship building.
Yeah.
And you do have to trust your teammates. So it's you're like, I have no idea who this guy is, but I'm trusting him I'm going to tell him when to cut that wire, and hopefully he doesn't do it at the wrong time, because, the alarm's going to go off or blow us all up. It's all fun. It's all fun.
Well, yeah. And, I think that type of like actual communication with one another and everything else, and, getting to actually know people, who they are as individuals when you're working with them, is really important. Not just working with them, but even in everyday life. Like, just especially with the way our culture is now, with how it's everything. I mean, it does within 2 seconds of going on Twitter or any sort of social media, you'll see people are at each other's throats, and they don't even know each other. They're just going off on one another. And it's interesting. But then when you put people in a position where it's like, okay, now you all actually have to work together for something, right? Now this, like, it might not be real, right? But you still have to do something in order to accomplish a goal. And that's something that I don't think is really sort of reinforced now through like our culture, because I think so much of it is just like, oh, like, hey, this guy told me off online, and this person did this, and this person shared this story, and blah, blah, blah. And it's just this spiral. And so there's no real effective form of communication. And it's, whether it's through like social media, email, anything done online. And so it's important that, you have an opportunity like what you provide, is that you're able to actually get people to work alongside one another, because that's really how human beings were supposed to work alongside each other to begin with, right? Like this whole, like, we were supposed to work in small tribes of anywhere from 10 to like 100 people, right? And so I think it's important because, you're allowing people to really sort of relearn some of those skills that they might have forgotten about, or like those skill sets that they totally just, knew they were there, but they never really used it. That muscle was never exercised, right? And if you can get people to sort of exercise that muscle and exercise that way of communicating with people, that will then translate to other aspects of their lives. And the other thing I wanted to ask is, so when you're going about and you're doing the team building, or like when you're doing any sort of like mountaineering or anything, how do you go about like figuring out like a strategy? Like, hey, this is X, Y, and Z, because obviously it just doesn't come together like, on the fly, right? I'm guessing there's some sort of strategy behind that. Like, how does that go down? Like, do you research the place where you're going to go? How many months out? What are the variables that you consider for, let's say, like a mountaineering expedition? Like, what are the variables that you have to consider? I guess that's my question.
Yeah, with mountaineering, it's pretty dangerous. So there's a lot of things to think about. So is it, obviously the route itself, Is it well climbed? Sometimes we do new routes that no one's done before. So obviously a lot more research in there. So we're looking at satellite imagery. We're looking at topographical maps. We'll be talking to other people that have climbed there before, or any guidebooks of climbs in the area. So mountaineering is so broad because it can cover anything as Kilimanjaro, where it's kind of just more like a hike. It's a mountain, but it's a hike up, to being really extreme and remote, where there's bodies on the climb itself that have people that didn't make it. Right. So you're kind of like this huge variety here. It's almost like are you going for a walk in the park, or are you going like jumping over boulders with waves crashing? There's like different hiking trails you can do. Same with mountains. Right. They can get really dangerous, and some are in the wind's jet stream, so the weather's just terrible, and other ones can be calm. And then what seasons are really big. So different mountains will have a very small window of, they call it the climbing season, that you can actually climb it safely. So that's important. So what month do you want to do it? It may just not be possible if you can't get the time off that month to do it. Like Everest, as an example, has a very small window, and everyone wants to go on that same week. Like, it's more or less like a couple weeks that you're climbing. Everyone's forced into like this few weeks of good weather, potentially good weather. And then you get this, if a lot of people want to do the same route as you, as in Everest, you get this like people lining up like they're going to a roller coaster ride. They're just like back to back, and they're like waiting in line to get to the top, which is totally not my style. That just makes me sick. When I go up to the mountains to get away from people and to do something remote and feel like I'm exploring and doing something. So even if I see other people's footprints in front of me on my mountain, that upsets me. I'm like, oh man, like I have to follow this guy's footprints. I want to make my own. Like I want to be able to find the route myself, right? But another thing that's interesting is too, because I guide mountaineering in the past, I've done a lot of guiding. So we would actually have a little team building thing before we go with our team, because that's super important. Because on a mountain, you're there for at least a few weeks, usually on a mountain, stuck with a bunch of people that you have no idea who they are. And most people can't stay on their good behavior for that amount of time under like big stress, like they're getting sick, they're stressed, there's bad weather, their clothes are wet, they're cold, they get miserable, they're hungry. So as a guide, you have to be able to manage all these people that are complaining all the time, potentially. Or this person's got a blister, this person, you're constantly checking on people. So it's kind of a tricky job. You're babysitting adults, which are sometimes worse things than kids, because you can't force them to do anything, but you kind of need to, because they don't, something bad can happen.
Yeah, you might die.
Or like, put the sunscreen on. I know I asked you 3 times already. I know you're tired, but you're going to get sunburn really bad, and it's going to blister, like 2nd-degree burns on your face. Like, come on, you got to do it.
Yeah.
And like, it's hard because in altitude, people don't want to do anything. They get so tired and exhausted. So I have lots of great mountaineering stories of interesting things that have happened. I've had we've had lots of stuff, and then other climbers too, sometimes interfering with your climb or messing things up, or so there's so many things involved. But usually, if it's a mountain that you haven't done before, usually there's a several months of research minimum, sometimes even more. Like a half a year is a nice amount of time to have some leeway. GPS is really helpful these times. Like now, like before when I started climbing, GPS didn't really exist, and when it did, it was it wasn't reliable. So a lot of maps and compass skills, that sort of thing. And satellite phones are really cheap now. When I started, they either didn't exist or they're so expensive you would never bother to take one. Now you have a lot more at your fingertips now to help. Like when I first climbed Mount Logan in Canada's highest mountain, we got dropped off in a little airplane on a glacier, Kluane, the glacier at the base of the East Ridge. And we were the only people on the whole glacier when the plane dropped us off. There wasn't another person anywhere. And he dropped us off in this little airplane. He said, oh, by the way, the radio's not working, so I'll fix it and drop it off in a week or so.
Yeah.
When the next people come to climb the mountain. So we had zero communication, right? And we're like, well, how do we know where it's going to be? The glacier's hundreds of square kilometers, right? Huge.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'll be close to where I dropped you off last time, but we're thinking if it snows, like I drop a couple feet of snow overnight, you'd never know where he dropped us off. It's about the same area within like, a couple square kilometers probably. And then it's going to have a bamboo pole that's 8 feet tall with a little streamer that says radio on. He's going to bury the radio in the snow and stick the pole in the ground. Like stuff like that just doesn't happen anymore.
No.
But it was quite interesting. So we climbed the whole mountain with no communication, and we came down. We had to find this radio and dig it out, and it was like ran on Duracell batteries that you had to warm up in your coat, and then antenna. You had to unroll it yourself and aim it between two mountains, the 150 feet of antenna. It took us 2 days just to get the radio to work so he could hear us.
Oh, Jesus.
Like we could hear him, but he couldn't hear us because our battery. We found out later our batteries were too cold. But he only listens to the radio at once at 8 o'clock in the morning for like 10 minutes, and then once at 7 o'clock at night for 10 minutes.
Right.
Even if you would never know if you have it working or not, because he's the only one you can talk to. It's quite interesting. So it took us a few days just to figure out how to use this, because he never gave us a tutorial. He just dropped off this old army radio, and you kind of were just trying to figure out how it worked. It was quite interesting.
So you were basically on like another planet, right? You could have been on Mars.
We could have been, yeah. When we did come back, we were there for about a month. When we did come back, there was other climbers starting to climb, so there was people to talk to and stuff. But again, they were gone. Like after we met them, and then the next day they were up and gone. So it was just us again. So we didn't see people very often, but it's just a little different. So depending on what mountain you do, depends on like a popular mountain that's really big in Alaska is McKinley, which is Denali. And they had a debate on the name for a few years now. But that one has like a base camp, like a permanent base camp with like rangers up there. And there's like a medical tent or cabin. Yeah. And there's like, thousands of people on that mountain throughout the summer or open the season, the spring, summer. So there's always people around to talk to, where other mountains, there's nobody.
Right.
And you're all by yourself, which is what I prefer. It's a little scary. And some people, to me, that's why I do it. I like to do it because it's the challenge and there's the remoteness of it. And it feels like you're kind of, even if you know the route, you really don't if you haven't climbed it before, because the mountain's huge. You just have a general idea of what ridge to go up, but there could be many variations on a ridge on which, so it's kind of a little bit of that, a little bit challenging. And there's the danger factor, which makes it extra exciting too, right? So for me, I guess I like that. Some people are like, no way, I'd never even dream about doing that. But then those people might hire a guide that then knows the route and takes them up, which I've done before. I usually don't guide people I haven't climbed. If I haven't climbed the mountain before and it's a relatively hard mountain, I won't guide people on the road if I don't know it. Usually I just don't feel, as a guide, I feel like I should know the route a little better, at least do it myself once. If it's an easy mountain, I've guided easy mountains before without any, knowledge of the mountain, but harder climbs, I usually like to know. And then I like to climb a little bit with the people prior to, or know what they've done. So I know that we're not getting in over our heads, because if they hurt themselves, I got to get them out. And that could be, dangerous for the entire group, right? If we have someone injured or someone that can't do the climb and we have to get out, or it gets very complicated, right? Yeah. You have a lot of equipment on a mountain. Only the rope you have and a few carabiners and some ice screws and some snow pickets and just what you got. So if someone's like a totally, I can do everything, and you get there and you realize they don't know anything, there's the big talker, then you might be in a lot of trouble.
And I'm guessing, has that happened? Has that happened once or twice?
No, not so much. But I get that a lot on courses. I'll get a lot of people sign up on an instructional course, and they don't want to take the prerequisite course. So they'll be like, oh, yeah, I know all that. And then they come out on the day and realize they don't have a clue what they're doing.
Yeah. And then obviously you have to like backtrack with them and then sort of work. And then it becomes more about them and getting them to a point than it is to actually like get with.
Or they'll be like, I just need a 2 hour or 1 hour refresher on rappelling because I'm in this movie, because I do a lot of stunt training. So like some stunt guy will be like, yeah, I just need to do this like a couple hour or an hour rappel refresher because I'm going to be rappelling face first down this building in this movie. I got to look good. And I'm like, well, how much rappelling experience do you have? Oh yeah. And then they come out and I'm like, dude, you need more. You need like like, I don't know, like 2 days of full training to be good. Like, yeah, you can be safe within an hour, but you're going to look, you want to look good. You don't look good. You look like an amateur because you are, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting. So I'm out near and I usually try to, with our groups, we'll usually try and get everyone together and do like a bit of a team building thing together. So everyone gets to know each other. And sometimes we might even do like a personality traits thing.
Okay.
Because and we do that with some team building too. If the group comes to us and says, we have problems, that's why we're coming to team building. Like these people hate each other. Like there's a few people that really don't get together and they're like butting heads. And it's like, we either got to fire someone or we got to make this team's got to work together because right now they're not working together. And so we might do a personality trait thing. We might get one of our facilitators will come in and talk about personality traits and they'll do some exercises. And that usually helps a lot of people who haven't done that before because they realize they're just different personalities. And that helps right away. They realize that person doesn't do that because just to annoy me. They just do that because that's who they are. And I'm who I am. And we just, when they see that it's just two opposing personalities, they kind of can laugh about it. Yeah. And you can laugh at yourself and be like, sorry, dude, that's just me being me. Like, I know I'm like, I don't know why I do that. We had one group that came out and the ship and receiving guy, everyone hated him. Apparently he was in charge of all the shipping and receiving for this company. And everyone couldn't get along with this guy because they thought, well, if I do him a favor, he'll do me a favor.
Right. So, okay, fair enough.
So someone shows up and says, well, all the shipping has to be in by like anything to be shipped out has to be in by 3:00 or it doesn't get shipped out to the next day. That's his rule, right?
Yeah.
Right. He's got a department of guys that look up to him and he told them that he's not going to give them anyone after 3:00. They just have the rest of the day to get whatever's out or something similar to that, and then people will come in at 3:30 and be like, well, I got this thing that needs to go out to this client today. You can make it happen, right? And he's like, no, I can't. Like, well, what do you mean? Like, it's a really big client, and I helped you out last time. And he's like, well, that doesn't matter. So everyone would be mad at this guy, and it's just his personality. He's a gold personality. I'm doing a colors one. I'm referring to a colors one because it's a simpler one. A gold personality type is they follow the rules no matter what, and they live by rules, and that's just what it is. And he's made these rules, and he won't break them. And he's like, it was just his rule, but his rule affects his entire team of 20 guys, right? So if he's always breaking the rules, all his guys feel like, well, then we can break the rules too, right?
Right.
So anyway, it's just his personality. So once they went on the team building thing and they all started to realize that he's just what he said, it's actually good when you have a goal, you know how to deal with them because it's always by the rules, right? You show them the rules. And you open the book to this rule, he'll immediately change his mind, be like, oh, you show me the rule. It's good to go. You can ship it out or whatever, right? He's by the rules. He's very easy to understand because you tell him to make a new rule and he'll follow it. And if you make a rule and it's a governing rule that governs everyone, he'll follow it. So they're really reliable, very reliable people. But again, if you try to do something outside the rules, you hit this brick wall and they won't give you an inch.
Right.
And on this team building thing, it was really funny at the end of the day, actually, one of the guys was like, you know what? You're not such an a-hole after all. Just whatever, right? And it was, and everyone started laughing and they all kind of got along. And then the guy that organized the team building thing pulled me aside and was like, this is totally what we needed. Like this is just like, he never dreamed anything like this could ever happen where everyone was laughing together about something. And he kind of laughed at himself and said, yeah, I'm not just a grumpy old F or whatever. I just need to follow rules and that's who I am. Right. Right.
Yeah.
So, and everyone started to get along. And then everyone kind of knew, okay, you know what? Like, just don't ask him to ship anything out after 3 because it's never going to happen. Right. Because you're just going to hit a wall. Right. Or whatever. Maybe they can compromise, but it has to be a rule. A rule comes in. The client if it's like a warranty issue or something, if it's a big issue, okay, well, then there's got to be an amendment to the rule that he tells his guys, well, nothing will go out to you. I won't send you anything after 3 unless
Right.
it's like one of these 5 big clients that pay all our bills, right?
Right.
Or
Yeah.
it's these reasons. And then if it's a rule, it'll work, right? So anyway, just help them understand, because before it was just a bunch of cursing back and forth, right? And there's no communication anymore. It was just a bunch of unfriendly faces, feeling like nothing was working.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's important. It's important, like I was saying earlier, it's important that people, they facilitate, they have these conversations with one another. And it's so easy if you're in an office setting, or you're like, even with some of my schooling, and because right now everything got moved online. And so all of like the nuances about like trying to explain something about like an assignment or some project, and trying all the nuances about like, hey, I'm just unsure about how to do this. An email is so impersonal. It's so, so cold. You're not getting any of like the micro cues about how someone feels about something. And I'm not saying that you should always think about that, but just how, like, what exactly the best strategy is. And it's funny because I don't think, like, human beings weren't supposed to just communicate just based over like technology, right? Just over like a cell phone or whatever, right? And so it's funny because then we actually get to know someone, when you're actually able to really know who they are, and they send you an email, or they send you this or that, or a text message, and you're like, oh, I totally know what they mean by that. I know who they are. But like, it's a really shitty way to communicate. And it's really easy, because then what you can do is with social media now, you can easily deplatform people. If they just go against, even if it's something that is so trivial, right? Next thing you know, well, their career's ruined. Let's say you're an actor, your career's done, right? And it doesn't make any sense. But yet when you if you were to actually sit down with these people and to work with them and communicate with them, you realize you're like, oh no, they interpret, let's say you're debating some political issue. It's like, no, they're just this staunch conservative, and that's just the way they are. It doesn't mean they're a bad person. It's just who they are as an individual. But enough of that. But so in terms of, you mentioned the volcano thing at the beginning of the conversation. How did that come about? Like the volcano, like who decides, hey, let's go and do this? Like that's so weird.
Yeah, I do. So I had an actress contact me, or she's like a TV celebrity from Brazil, and she has done Everest twice now. She's climbed Everest twice from both sides. She's trying to make a name for herself as a Brazilian woman, TV personality. You always have to have something that makes you different, right?
Right.
What puts you above the other person that makes you get you the TV show over the next personality, right? Mm. So she has all these different ideas, and everyone does, of how do you set your career higher. And one of her things was to do things and she's fit, young, and athletic, so do something other people haven't done before. And she has an adventurous personality. So, and her portfolio is already pretty amazing. Like it's already made, like helicopter pilot, doctor, climbed Everest twice now. So she was looking for something that no one else has done before. Or actually, the pit of fire I did in Turkmenistan, I lowered the guy into the pit of fire, and it was in the Guinness Book of World Records in 2017 as well, a big spread on that. And there was a National Geographic documentary for an hour, full documentary on it. So she saw that and said, you know what, I want to be the first woman to ever do that. Okay. So instead of being the first Brazilian woman, blah, blah, you have to list like 5 other things to make you the first Brazilian woman to do this, right? But this would be the first woman in the world to do it.
Right.
And we started organizing that, but then we ran into some problems with the government, and it looked like it wasn't going to happen. So she's like, well, let's cancel it. But she already had pitched this idea to this TV show, which was funding it. And so she was like, well, maybe I'll just go to Hawaii and poke at some lava in a heat suit or something, because she had to do something with lava and heat or something with fire or heat. And she's like, well, maybe I'll do something not as cool, but whatever. Like she can't do it. And I said, well, let's change this. I'm going to put a different idea that I've had in my head out for a while. Let's do it over lava, but let's do it. Let's do a world first, where you won't be the first woman to ever do it. You'll be the first person to ever do it. The first person on the planet to ever traverse over an erupting volcano on a rope. So she was like, really? Like, we can do that? And I was like, yeah, it's pretty much the same idea as the Pit of Fire thing. So I kind of did a little bit of research, and then I, just like I would for a mountain, and I said, I found the right volcano. It's erupting right now. Again, the season's right. Our time's coming up. And then a few other things needed to be done. Like, we needed a heat suit that could work for a volcano. So there was none. No one makes one. So I said, well, let me contact some people I know and contact some sponsors that design this kind of special fabrics, and I'll get some sponsorships. I have enough background that when I send my portfolio to people are like, what? Yeah, I'll help you. So I said, hey, like, can you give me a bunch of free fabric to build this volcano heat suit? And we'll give you some promotional photos afterwards of your fabric being used to build this suit. And they're like, yeah, for sure. As much as you want. They gave me tons of stuff. They gave me everything. So then I designed, and I find the right people to join the team to build the heat suit and do the design and all this sort of thing, and get fire department, like a fire rescue guy. I know that he's part of my team that I run stuff off of and do heat tests, and he gets SCBA units, the same fire unit or the breathing apparatus the firefighters use to go into the burning building. So we need to get stuff like that. So he kind of arranges that stuff for me and helps me. So yeah, we got all this together, and off to the volcano we went, to the Ethiopia, and we did the first ever traverse over an erupting volcano there in Ethiopia. And she wasn't sure that I could do what I said I could do.
Okay.
So she didn't plan a lot of time to do the lava. Actually, she only gave me 3 days to do everything. And that's the day from the day we arrived to the day we left. We had 3 days. And our team it was interesting. Our team got cut shorter and shorter because of financing, because a bunch of money got lost with flights from booking to Turkmenistan, and she was on a Brazilian budget. So anyway, a bunch of money got cut. So the team got smaller and smaller. So in the end, it was just me as the rigger. And her and her photographer, which is a climber guy. So we had a few riggers, but in the end, they couldn't help me because their knowledge wasn't really where it needed to be. So I rigged the whole thing. Rigged the whole thing, did the whole thing, took it all down. So it was kind of a fly-by-night zip line or lava thing, but it was a total success. But she didn't allocate a lot of time because she also wanted to do a bunch of other stuff in Ethiopia, like go to the acid lakes and go to the dry salt beds, because she wanted to add enough stuff in there that if the lava thing didn't work, that she had enough to sell to the TV network that was still cool, and she would still get a picture of her in the heat suit and the lava, but she never thought we'd be able to zip line over it. She kind of said, like, she was almost like 90% sure we wouldn't be able to do it. That's what she told me later. But I was like 99% sure that we could.
Okay.
Again, she was kind of covering her own butt.
Yeah.
But and we did it, and we got it. It was just a little bit faster than we could have, and we could have made a whole documentary just about that, but we didn't have the crew to do it.
Right.
But in the end, it was a great success. And since then, I've been to a few other volcanoes doing rigging and rope work into the volcanoes to do some unique things, take people down volcanoes and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah, that's so so bizarre. That's so weird, because it's you just don't hear of that every day, right? You just don't hear of like, hey, so and so decided to essentially put themselves over a pit of lava in a suit that was just custom made. Like, it's so like, what like is Elon Musk behind this? Like, I don't understand. Like,
I'm waiting for his phone call, actually. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, hey, maybe that's the thing is the internet's changed everything for people, right? And it's like that girl alone, she could totally just she wouldn't even really need the TV show if she's that unique as an individual, right? That that's so at the edge of like what people are doing. that it's like, you don't hear about that every day, right?
No,
You turn on you don't hear about that.
No, the TV network, the TV industry, because I've been on like hundreds of TV shows by now, or been behind the scenes. It's a very interesting, it's very interesting how it works, and it's all about a little bit of who you know, but then also who you selling it to, and who did they happen to run the show by, and what do they think's going to sell, right?
Right.
And it's all about that, and so there's actually stuff going on behind the scenes that I can't talk about on these other shows that are going on. But a lot of it is like they got a great show idea, but it just doesn't sound like it's going to ever go, because it's either not selling to the right person, or the person that's receiving it from that network is not the right person, because it doesn't really attain, they're not really interested in it. So therefore, it doesn't look like a good show. We'll cut that. Or the way they did the sizzle reel isn't exciting. There's all these different things. So it's strange. So I did get contacted about the Brazilian lady, about maybe that she could actually be like a female Bear Grylls kind of thing, right? Like we could get her on the show. And how's her English? Is her English good? I was like, it's better than mine. She's got an accent, but her English is good, right? And they're like, but we could try and pitch a TV show with her as the new, like a female version, right? And I was like, that might work. Has a better portfolio in the end. If you look at her portfolio to get into it, like it's like, Bear Grylls has a pretty nice one now, but getting into the show, he didn't have a lot behind him.
No, it's so weird how he came about, because it was like you had at the time, like I remember it was like you had like Les Stroud and then you had Bear Grylls, and it was like this weird dichotomy between like one guy who's actually like sort of out there surviving and like doing it, and actually like, peeing in a bottle and then sticking it in the sand and then figuring out a way to filter the water out and doing all sorts of crazy stuff that like last ditch methods, right, that you would normally do, like talking about Les, or like, him being like, hey, I'm going to simulate, my arm not being able to be used in this scenario. And then on the other hand, you have Bear Grylls, which it's cool. It's awesome. Like, it's to the average person, I get it in terms of like excitement and having people, in terms of like viewership, right? Because if you're not really into the whole surviving outdoors thing, I understand how Les Stroud might not be like appealing, whereas Bear Grylls in terms of the entertainment value is more appealing. But at the end of the day, the people who are going to be interested in that, they're only going to pay attention to Bear Grylls for a little bit, and then it's like, okay, well, on with the next, like let's do something else. It's like, okay, we've seen him try to, we've seen him eat the snake 100 times by now. All right, we already know what he's going to do, and it's just, some of it's so ridiculous. Like, it's the stuff he would do is just so preposterous that it's just like, wait, hold on, you're trying to tell me that you would just find yourself in this god awful scenario with no outside communication, which can happen, but it's like now, and you're doing all this crazy shit, like what, that would endanger you? It just doesn't make it, just to the person like myself who's like, hey, I actually like the outdoors, I like doing this type of stuff. It didn't make any sense. It seems staged. And that's
it is, and that's the TV that we live in these days. It's staged. I'm sure Bear Grylls is rolling his eyes behind the screen, but then he has to jump on, and he's this personality. It's a created personality. I'm sure behind the scenes, a lot of times he's like, I don't want to do that, but it's like, well, here's your contract. You got to do what we want. And he's like, okay, he's probably rolling his eyes too, but he's okay with it because it sells the show, right? And it's a person, he's got to create a personality for himself for TV, right? And and I was being contacted about doing something similar, and I was just thinking to myself, like, I got to create this TV personality, right? Me as well, right? Because I always got it under control, and whatever. They're like, well, that's not super exciting, right? Because no personality. You got to be a more like, whoa, that like it surprised me, or like I got asked if I could like fake a failure in one of my rigging gear and stuff. I'm like, I can't do that. Like, I'm not gonna fake that I don't know what I'm doing, because could ruin me, right? Like, yeah, it's great TV. Right. The thing exploded. I was like, well, why don't we do like Mythbusters, where we just, what if it failed and we break it for real, that kind of thing. Very interesting. What the TV, what people perceive, and like the National Geographic documentary too. Like it's very interesting. And I don't know if people know, but in documentaries in the United States now, I'm not sure how global it is, but in the United States, a documentary doesn't have to have a shred of truth in it anymore. A documentary is considered entertainment. It's no different than a sitcom in the sense of how much truth has to be in it. So you could have a total lie, make it look like the total truth, sell it as a documentary, trick half the world into thinking that you're a genius that figured something out, but really just lying the whole time. So a lot of people don't realize. In Canada, I talked to a few people in the area, and it sounds like there still has to be a certain amount of truth. Otherwise, you might lose your right to create documentaries or be shamed or something. But in the States now, it's a open game. It's total open season on entertainment, and that documentaries have been downgraded to the same as everyone else. So they'll fake stuff in documentaries now and lie, and it's just getting out of control, really. Mm-hmm. Which is scary for the average person that watches TV and thinks they're being educated, where really they're maybe just lied to because they think this is more exciting. Not that they're trying to lie to you, but they want to sell their program more. So either they, it's just be careful in this age, watching television, documentaries and stuff. How much truth are you really getting out of it?
Well, right. I mean, you look at some of the Planet Earth and some of the actual the BBC documentaries and how there was a controversy around them because what they were doing is they weren't actually filming where these animals would be in their natural environment. And it's funny because there's this whole series that you have these biologists, you have these ecologists sort of essentially deconstruct these wildlife documentaries and saying no, these animals actually wouldn't belong there, because what this is like a wildlife reserve in let's say New Guinea, right, where realistically you would never find these animals in this location normally. But the reason why they're in this location and this isn't their actual natural environment is because of the mass deforestation or other environmental actually disasters that are taking place. And so what's so bizarre, because you look at let's say we're going off the wildlife documentaries, and you have the savannah, right, and you have this you have the savannah and you have these safaris. And realistically, if you've ever been on a safari or anything else, and for a fact, or even out even in Canada, right, being out in the real world in nature, you realize it is very seldom that you run across animals that are doing something that isn't part of their natural behavior. And so you have a lot of these nature documentaries take footage of these sort of fabricating environments where these animals naturally would be. And you're actually not getting the real truth of how these animals would behave, and how you have some animals that essentially you have these there was a scene I was watching because it was part of this ecology class I was taking, and the ecology professor was like, okay, so look at these birds. Now, these are trained birds. This isn't actually what they would normally do. There's no way that these filmmakers would even be able to get this close to watch these birds mate and doing their mating calls. And so it's so weird to me, because you have people like yourself who are actually you're doing the legwork, and what you're doing is real, right? And you're doing everything you can to make it as real as possible. And you're, in some cases, you're risking your life to do this. But then on the other hand, you have people who are just, they're faking it, right? They're making it up. And it's kind of it's so weird because my family background is the music industry. And but the weird thing is I grew up around musicians who they would just perform, and that's what they do, right? But then around the 80s, along came tracking and backtracking, and so it's kind of similar, because now you have in terms of what actually deems a live performance, you can have these musicians go on stage with basically a microphone and do a bunch of acrobatics and somehow deem that as a live performance, but they're not actually performing anything. It's the fact that there's a stage, and then there's a bunch of backing music to call it a live performance, but it's really nothing live at all. And it's just so weird, because then on the other hand, you have something for instance, stand-up comedy, where it's if or theater, or musical theater, and even then that gets dicey. But stand-up comedy, like, you can't fake doing stand-up. You can't fake that. Like, it's either you're funny and you know what you're doing when you're delivering in front of an arena or in front of 10 people at a fucking bar, a dive bar, and you know what you're doing, or you suck. There's nothing to come and save you. And so it's weird. It's so weird, because then there's this mask that people almost like this to throw up, like what we were talking about earlier. It's like there's this weird role and this weird mask that, when you run into a guy they're like, yeah, no, I've totally done all this before. Yeah, I know what I'm doing. Yeah. And then you're like, okay, all right, let's see what he knows what he's doing. And you just realize it's just bullshit. It's all just bullshit, because they're just trying to protect their ego. And it's weird. And I think in a lot of ways, what social media has done, and what things like this, a podcast or anything else, they've shown people that you can have communication and you can talk to people, and people, you realize they're either good at what they're doing, or they suck, or they're just getting started. And it's like this barrier has been removed for a lot of people. And so it's a weird world. And especially now with even like the whole like coronavirus thing and everything else going on. Of course I had to bring it up. But in terms of like what else is going on, like it shows a lot of people that they aren't really prepared for it, right? They aren't prepared to really show themselves who they are, because I'm sure most of these people have never spent, like, unlike guys like yourself who spent days on end with their own thoughts, right, just in isolation, right? And so it's really weird. And so I think, to bring this full circle back to reality, but I think we're going to see something after all this is said and done with the coronavirus and everything else, after people come out of this weird sort of like isolation, and how people have had to go into themselves to figure themselves out, or at least I hope some of them do. But it's weird. And I think some of the bullshit, I hope some of the bullshit, some of the social media, like the personas that people play, will kind of get washed out after this. And I hope it returns people to base camp, so to speak, right? I mean, to wrap this up just briefly, but how has like mountaineering, in your experience, to bring this to reality, helped you with the whole coronavirus scenario and everything else? Like, how has this prepared you for this, if at all?
Yeah, for me, I don't think much. I kind of live a different life than most people, as you might obviously you're aware of. And other than not being able to hike on the nature trails locally around me, I kind of live in a more rural area, so the trails that are closed, there's not enough paid policemen to monitor these anyway. But I abide by those. I won't hike on those trails, but there's a lot in the forest close to me, in other areas I can go hiking and stuff. But other than that, like, things haven't really changed much for me. I homeschool my kids already. So my kids go to a homeschool school once a week, was a woman that's a teacher, that she decided to homeschool her own kids. So our kids go once a week to kind of get their curriculum checked up, and she gives them homework to do for the next week. So other than now they're doing that over Zoom or some sort of social video chat thing, and then she gives them stuff to do. They're doing, everything's almost the same, other than I'm not working.
That's good. No, that's
which
good
is
to hear.
Good. So for me, I think it's great. Like I'm almost thinking there's so many good things that are coming from this. Like for me personally, just to reset like you said, it's like a reset button. It's like, hey, focus on family, focus on just getting things done around here and catch up. And it's, my wife's very social, so for her it's hard not being able to see her friends and bring people around. And for me, it's a little hard we have a younger child, so we have 3 kids, and one of them is just over 1.5 now. Mm-hmm. So I find him very draining, obviously. Like, I love spending time with him, but spending 3 hours engaging him with, like, he doesn't want you to read the book. He wants you to, like, make up bird noises and cars sing and the car go around and around like 1,000 times. I find that's almost more exhausting than climbing a mountain. I'm like, oh man, 3 hours with this kid? Like, are you kidding me? This is torture. But it's fun. Like, I'd rather take him on a hike or do something outdoors. We have a yard, so I feel it for people that maybe are like an apartment or something. Like, I could see how that would be very hard, being not even be able to get outside very much, or just be on a balcony or something. I live in an area where I have some property, and so it hasn't really affected me too much. I could see that mental health for a lot of people might be going downhill, and my wife's really concerned about that for some people. Mental health for some people that just it's they don't know how to deal with it, right? And if they're older and isolated from maybe their grandkids or their family, and now they're stuck home alone, I could see how that mental health could be a big problem for some people. For me, isolation, I'm happy with it. I could go on a month solo trip and I could have the best time. I'd be like, this is awesome. I love it. Like, and I've done solo trips before where I just grab my gear before I had kids, or I was married. Hey, I want to go on a solo trip, grab my stuff. I just drive, and then I just go wherever for a week or two. Right. And and I thought that was great. I feel it's strange when I see people climbing. I never thought about it. I guess you could bring an iPad or an iPod climbing or your phone and put music in your ears while you're climbing or hiking across the glacier for 6 hours and listen to music. But I was just like, it didn't even dawn on me. Like, listen to music. Like, I don't bring any audio. I don't bring any any of that kind of those kind of devices with me on any trip. I just never thought about that. I guess when I started climbing, it'd have to be like a double A battery, cassette player, right? So just eat up so much batteries, you'd carry 5 pounds of batteries to listen to your music. So I never started that way. So now that the technology is available, I could have a solar panel in my backpack. Instead of charging my camera, I could also charge my phone and listen to music. I just don't think about it. So for me, being alone and being with my own thoughts for days on end is fine. But I could see some people that just can't turn the music off.
No, seriously.
But I'm sure a lot of people are just getting they listen to that song so many times and watch their favorite TV show so many times now. They're just almost like overstimulated. Stimulated. They can't listen to it anymore. They don't know what to do with themselves, right? I could totally see that. So I've been using a lot of this time to catch up on my physical fitness. So I'm usually so busy or tired when I get home from work some days, and then I got kids to entertain. By the time they're entertained, and I'm just like, oh man, I do not feel like doing an hour of cardio or weights or push anything. But now now we're doing family workout every night. We have an hour, minimum 1 hour family workout we do. So I think I'm getting in better shape than I've been in a while. So it's right. As long as you can kind of find the positive things to do with your time as opposed to just binge eat or something. Ice cream, chocolate bar, just coming out of this unhealthy. That would be a shame, right?
Yes, it would be. It would be a shame to come out of this unhealthy. I'm sure some people, unfortunately, will. Right? They'll find a way. They'll find a way to screw it up.
I did see something. There's all these funny posts. I slide through social media once in a while because I just read people's little funny posts, kind of humorous sometimes. Someone posted something about, for once we can save the world by sitting on our butts and doing nothing. And it's we'll screw it up. Right? We won't even be able to do that right. We're going to screw it up.
Oh, yeah. Seriously.
And people are already out. You see people hopping fences and going to beaches where they're not supposed to be, and social gatherings in certain areas. Like, I haven't seen that, but I've seen people posting stuff, and it is like, oh man, it's come on, people.
Come on. Okay, we can just, if the quicker we get over this, the quicker we can.
The quicker everyone can follow some rules, the quicker we can be out of this. But it's. And everyone has different opinions about how the government's handling things. But you know what? This is what they've decided. So let's just all go along with it and hope that, let's try to, they picked one way to deal with it. So let's do our best and just help out. Right.
Yeah. And that's all you can do right now. And that's the main thing. And like, opinions and everything else aside, it's like, okay, it's real. Okay, so this is happening now. How are you going to deal with it? How are you going to deal with this personally? How are you going to deal with your family, et cetera, right? Like and I'm sure you've seen it before, right? With people who are just getting used to something. They don't know. They've never been in this position before, right? And so it's something that I think, if people, you're a good example. If people can find a way to climb a mountain, but not just a mountain, but multiple mountains, and people can find a way to climb Everest, right? And that's what they can do. They can find a way to go out and do that. I'm pretty sure we're going to get through this, right? If we can put people in space, right, and we can manage that, we've managed to not blow ourselves up by now, we'll be able to get through this, I'm pretty sure, right?
Yeah.
But on that happy note, well, I appreciate you taking taking time out of your day to do this. It's been fun. At least being able to shoot the shit with you for the past hour.
Good. Yeah, no, it's exciting. I love talking about the adventures I do and stuff like that. So it's always nice to talk about that kind of stuff. And you've seen some of the pictures, I think, from some of the expeditions I've done, and I'm always just like, oh, I hope I have another one coming up soon, because that kind of what keeps me going. And I'm kind of really glad I decided to go in this avenue and be an entrepreneur a little bit, in the sense of creating my own job, as opposed to just finding a desk somewhere, working for someone else, doing that thing. I am happy that I've decided to make the change, and I'm not just the weekend warrior, because trying to make it work on the weekend, or the 2 weeks a year I get off on vacation, that sort of thing, like that would be hard for my personality.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people that have my personality, but they're stuck in that, and I can just feel their frustration, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then it boils over, right? Yeah. But I think if anything, this virus has shown people, it's like your job, or what you perceive as your career, and how you perceive and I'm not saying that people aren't unimportant when they're working, right? That's not the point, right? But how it can just go like that, how it's just gone, and there's nothing you can do about it, right? And so it's like, okay, and I hope that it serves as a good sort of wake up call for some people who are doing who are realize that they're not doing something that they don't want to do. And I think, or even obviously don't, if you have obligations and you want to go in and everything else, fine, I get it, we're all adults. But at the same time, I hope this serves as a wake up call for people to be like, well, remember that book you wanted to write 20 years ago, right? And now you're 50, right? Or remember that those albums that you wanted to listen to? Well, now you have the time to do it, right? Now you have this opportunity, you have this window, and they don't know how long it's going to last, but eventually things will return back to normal, or whatever normal is. And I think it's going to be it's a good opportunity for people. I really do. I see the positive. I see the good in this coming out. I don't like the whole look at worst case scenario, right? I don't like that, because it's not healthy, right? And I'm sure you can attest to that. That it's like, you should think about the worst case scenario, right? That's something that should be in the back of your mind, but you shouldn't strive to work towards that, right? Like you shouldn't say, okay, well, let's just do nothing, because, well, not actually in this case, doing nothing is the good thing, but don't try to continue to live your life as you normally would, because you're going to screw this up even more, so to speak. And I'm sure, in your line of work, you've seen, people adapt in pretty bizarre circumstances.
Yeah, people can adapt pretty well. And I think as everyone just it'd be nice if everyone, I don't actually have 3 kids at home and a wife. I feel like I actually don't have much free time at all. I feel like I'm more socially involved than I usually am, because a lot of times I'm job by myself, rigging, or I'm doing this, or I'm working. But now I'm like, well, let's just take family time. But I don't have a lot of free time now, I find, because I'm engaging my kids, which is still time well invested. But people with free time, it would be great. Like I would be like, oh yeah, there's all these things I do want to catch up on that I can't do. I got to do by myself. I got an old documentary I started, I never finished. I got this other thing I've designed that I never finished. This is a great time for some people to either catch up on things they wanted to do or start something new. Hopefully, a lot of people, instead of just watching TV all day and complaining, hopefully they pick up, like maybe learn something, or let's try and become a skill, or like I've been trying to do, at least with my kids, is let's get fitter than we've been for a while. Let's add more physical activity, do some stretches, do yoga, do something new, learn some new skill, or even just through the internet. Nice that, if the internet was down, I think people would be really in trouble. But luckily, if it was 20 years ago, there's no internet. Well, now it's if you have it and they take it away, it'd be much worse than if you never had it to begin with, right?
Right.
But there's so much out there. People could be learning new skills at home, right? So but from the people who no one's doing that. Everyone's just complaining and binge watching TV series over and over again.
But you know what? I think we'll get through this. I do.
Yeah.
But anyways, thank you for, and just quick, like, how do people find you? How do people find your information, everything else, like online?
We have a few websites. I have a few websites. One is One Axe Extreme. That website's probably the funnest one to go to, oneaxeextreme.com. And that has pictures of some of the behind the scene movie stuff we've done, and some lava pictures, volcanoes, green screen stuff with superheroes and, IMAX movies. So that's really cool. And then we have the oneaxeteambuilding.com, which shows some of our venture team building programs and has little videos of the programs. And then One Axe Pursuits, which is the recreational. So I've met you ice climbing, right? We went on an ice climbing adventure together. So that's how we met. And then, so we do rock climbing, ice climbing, spelunking or cave-in. So there's those three websites, and they're all One Axe Pursuits, One Axe Extreme, One Axe Team Building. So people can usually just search those and find us. And we have a Facebook page, I think, for all of those things and social media stuff. So yeah, One Axe. Okay. That's a nickname that was given to me years ago, and we decided to keep with it. And so we incorporated a company, One Axe Incorporated, or One Axe Inc. And under it has all these divisions of different programs people can do.
Okay. Well, thanks for doing this today. Really appreciate it. And, stay sane at home.
Yes, you
too. All righty.
All right. It's good seeing you. Thanks. Bye.
Good seeing you. All right. I'll let you know if when the whole world comes back to normal, we'll do a course or something.
Sounds good.
All right. Cheers.